Welcome to La Verdad Duele. What is that? The truth. The truth that hurts. Even though we're not intending to hurt anybody's feelings, we know that we may share information that many people have strong opinions on. This is solely based on the fact that we love sharing information and we love passing that knowledge. And this podcast is all about that. And we hope you can enjoy that. Let's get to it. Welcome, Puyaka. I'm your host, Tijani Musa. And today in the studio, man, once again, we have the MVP, most valuable player, most valuable listener, the number one fan of the show. We have to bring her back because you already know what happened last time we brought her to the studio. So let me introduce to you this guest that I'm very, very happy to introduce. She is a cat mom. She's a teacher and the person that I'm very lucky to call my wife. Yazmin Musa is in the studio, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the studio, Mrs. Musa.
Hello, everyone. Puyaka.
All right. I like that energy. You got to keep up that energy for the rest of the show. So here's the first question for you. Do you know what happened last time we invited you to the studio?
Last time I was at the studio, our episode was, I think, one of the most downloaded and or most listened to in like across your platforms.
That is correct. I guess you do have the insides of the show. The last time I had you in the studio, your episode was the most downloaded, most listened to on YouTube and across all the platforms. So you do have the statistics correct. You know what that means though, right? Because the people love you. They love to hear what you have to say and they respect you. And that's the reason why we have to bring you back to the studio. Can you feel that?
I do.
All right. That's good. Okay. Well, let's, what we are going to talk about today is we'll try to dig into a little bit deeper into our relationship. Usually people see what you post on social media like Instagram, Facebook, but they don't know the kind of work that you do behind the scene to be able to post that smile, to be able to say that my relationship is going well. There is a lot of work that happens behind the scenes. So we are going to give a little bit of glimpse into our relationship. And like usual, when we record these things, it's not to brag or anything like that, show off or anything. We're just providing information, hoping that somebody that listens to it would gain something from it. Do you understand that? Do you get me?
I get you. I don't know if your listeners get you.
Hey, the listeners, man, you know, they are smart, intelligent people. So they understand us. They get it. All right. So before we get started to this, let's go back to the foundational things. Can you tell our listeners briefly how we met?
My first impression of you was that you were annoying. You know that. We met in I knew of you in high school, middle school, high school, I guess. And you were loud, you were obnoxious, and just so self-centered, and I was over it real quick. Yeah. And then years later, when we met officially in college, by then you were different, I guess.
Well, are you describing the same guy who was annoying, self-centered? First of all, I don't remember who that person is, and I do not know who that person is. Are you talking about me?
Yes, I'm talking about the Tijani that would sit or stand, in the middle of lectures and thank everybody for their time and for being there on behalf of blah, blah, blah. Nobody cared.
Okay. All right. And so that was your impression of me. And then down the road, we ended up having to work at the same event, right? And then we worked at that event and we were volunteering and helping high school kids and middle school kids. And then during that event, me and you were having a conversation with the other people that were there. And as you were leaving, what happened?
You threw yourself at me. At one point you even hugged me and you said something about going out and I just kept rejecting you. And when I left, I remember looking back and thinking, oh, I should have given him my number. But then I was like, nah, forget it. Yeah. And then like months down the road, it just happened to be that I was applying to be an RA at Mason when one of my references said I should reach out to you because you were already an RA.
No, hey, when you speak about my RA life, you have to put some respect on it. I was not just an RA. What was I?
The main event?
That's right.
I don't know.
She told you about me because I was one of the best RAs Mason has ever had. And so she said, hey, Tijani is an RA. You can reach out to him. Isn't that the message you got?
Yes.
All right. For those of you that are not in the studio, she's rolling her eyes on me, answering that question. I feel like she feel forced answering that question. But when she was talking about me being annoying, she was all, chuckly. You know what I'm saying? But
you're still annoying. Take it back. You haven't changed.
All right, so I asked you for your number, and you said no, you're not gonna give me your number. And then you were walking up the stairs. You thought that, ooh, I should have given him my number, but because your pride took over, you just walked away.
I smiled and walked away. Yeah.
Right. That's amazing. Very interesting. All right, and then down the road, you said one of a mutual mentor that we had suggested that you reached out to me for RA because you were applying for an RA, and then you apply, and then me and you talked about the RA position, and we became friends throughout that process, and you happened to get into the position, you got hired, and then our relationship just started as friends, and then I was there for you going through some personal things in terms of like relationship, right?
Yeah.
Yep, and then we started becoming friends, and then that just builds up, and then it leads to us starting talking. And I remember when you were giving me your phone number at that time, I don't even remember. I don't think I had a phone. It was on Facebook.
I'm pretty sure you had a phone, and I'm pretty sure we were messaging on Facebook Messenger or something like that.
Right.
And then I think when it came time to getting each other's number, I think you sent me yours in pieces. It was like the first 3 numbers, and then the next 3, and then the next 3, and like 3 separate messages. And I was so annoyed because I was like, why couldn't you just put it in like one long text so I ain't got to go back and forth to try and save your number? That's how like complicated you were.
The reason why, I think I told you the reason why I did that, because you were playing hard to get.
So you started playing hard again?
That's right. It's you were playing hard to get at first, and now that you need me, I know you need me because you want me to tell you the secrets of becoming an RA. So it is my opportunity to play the favor back. That's why I was giving you a hard time to get my phone number.
Okay.
Yeah,
well, I guess that's fair.
It is fair because it all comes together now.
Full circle.
That's right. And then after that, it just picked up, and then we started talking. This was like probably the end of 2013, and then
when we started talking,
right.
End of 2013. When we actually started officially talking, I would say it was end of 2013. We started dating
2014,
February 2014.
That's right. So like about 6 months or 7 months before February 2014, we were talking and trying to figure out.
You could say we were like working on our friendship / getting to know each other. It wasn't like romantically, I think, until the end of like 2013. That is correct.
And then finally in 2014, I think also in 2013, we're getting to know each other. And in 2014, I finally asked you out February 2014, right? And then
you did it on the cheesiest day, Valentine's Day. I'm always going to have that like over you.
Why do you think that's cheesy?
Because it's cheesy.
There you go. Because the way I see it, I don't celebrate Valentine's Day. Matter of fact, I don't like the fact that they have Valentine's Day because it's just people spending money that they don't have, charging on their credit cards to show love for one day. So for me, I know you celebrate Valentine's Day and it means something to you. So for me, in order for me to continue celebrating Valentine's Day, it makes sense to ask you out on Valentine's Day. So now that gives me a reason to recognize Valentine's Day. That's my thought process in going into that process of asking you out. But I took you to a nice, fancy restaurant.
Yeah, and after that, I'm pretty sure I made it clear if we ever were to get engaged or married, please don't let it be on Valentine's Day.
Right. And I learned from it. And just about the restaurant was nice. I took you out and we had a great night and I asked you out. Did you know that it took me about 3 to 4 months to recover from the money that I spent?
Oh, yeah, that college budget, man.
Yeah.
That was a nice dinner, though. Do you remember we got filet mignon, or however you say that, filet mignon, I think is how you say it. I don't know.
It sounds about right.
Look, we got steak, and we didn't even know that it was steak. I thought it was fish.
Yep.
That was like our first fancy dinner experience.
Yep, and you ate good. And it took me about 3 to 4 months to recover from it with the RA job, with the EIP job, with the... I was also working at the religious philosophy office department. So all my 3 jobs on campus, it took me about 3 to 4 months to recover from what I spent.
On one night.
One night. So yeah, finally. So, but let's talk about long distance relationship. Soon after we got into the relationship and I asked you out and thankfully you said yes. That is one of the first biggest yeses in my life. You said yes to dating me. And then in 2014, towards September 2014, actually, I got a job to go to South Korea to become an RA there. And I had to leave you. So we just got into our relationship. A few months later, I have to leave you. What was that for you?
I think because you were walking me through the whole process. It's like you were applying and getting accepted and all that. So I knew that you were doing this, but I guess I never imagined that it would actually happen. And then all of a sudden one day you come over to my dorm room and you're like, yeah, I got in the program. I'm going to South Korea in the fall 2014.
Right.
And I was like, what? Why? What? How? I was shook.
Yeah, this was about 6-7 months after you just said yes to dating me. So at that point, we haven't even spent a year together as being a couple, and I had to leave you.
Yeah. And I guess, it was so early in the relationship that I was like, we'll see if we make it through this. But, we were fine. Like, I think one of the main things that we did to make sure that our relationship could withstand being long distance, especially so early on, is that we were very consistent. So we had, consistent FaceTime dates. I don't think it was even FaceTime back then. I think it was Skype. We had specific times we talked on the phone. We had, we would chat over, what was it, Kakao Talk or whatever you were using in Korea. And I think it was just both of us being flexible with one another. I remember that semester that you were in Korea, I had a couple big milestones. I became a citizen.
Right.
That semester, and you weren't here for that. And I ran my first half marathon, and you weren't here for that. But I remember, I specifically remember that you said you signed up to track my half marathon and how I was doing and performing, and you were getting updates as I was running. So, I thought that was pretty cute. You were still involved even though you weren't there in person. And I remember right after finishing the half, I don't know how, but somehow I was watching you through video. I think you FaceTimed in with somebody else's phone to watch me as I'm sitting on the sideline with a blanket over me because I'm freezing.
Yeah. And one of the other challenges is that when I was in South Korea, the time difference is 13 hours, 14 hours difference. So when you were waking up, I was going to bed.
Yeah.
So when you were running that half marathon, I was tracking it. I was seeing the entire thing. It was 3 a.m. for me 4 a.m. and you were running a marathon here in the United States, and that was the time difference. So, and then you mentioned sacrifices. We had a set time we have to communicate, and I understand that. We know the days that we have to communicate. If you are busy, you will let me know. If I'm busy, I'll let you know. And just having that communication, do you think that having a clear set agenda or a schedule or clear communication and expectations was a helpful thing to have for that long distance to work?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and then also just like that trust. Like I trusted you to go off into Korea and know that like our relationship would be okay. Like you were gonna remain faithful, that you were going to, still think about me, still communicate with me. So yeah.
Yeah, and we were communicating the whole time, and you know exactly what I was doing at what time, and I know exactly what you're doing at what time. Just having, and the same thing also. I trusted you. I know that you respect me, and you're not gonna do anything that would, destroy or ruin the relationship. So
Right.
I had no worries about that. So when I was leaving for Korea, I mean, we had like deep conversation. It wasn't easy. And when I came and tell you about it the first time, I mean, you thought it was just something, it's just an application process. There's a chance I may or may not get it. And then when it became clear that I was actually going, we had deep conversation. There was serious conversation, what the expectations were going to be, what we needed to do to sustain that relationship. And then I was there for a semester. And then I came back December 2014 and to graduate, because that was the starting of, I just finished my first semester senior year. And you were also a senior. So I came back in December, and me and you have the spring semester to graduate.
Yeah.
And so we did the graduation May 2015. And what happened again?
Oh, and then we went to long distance again.
Right. At this point, our relationship just survived South Korea. And then I came back a semester later, graduating together. Our relationship again is tested for another long distance. What is different between this distance relationship in terms of time frame?
I mean, it was the same time zone, 2-hour difference. But I mean, you knew about that. So for those of you that don't know, I worked with Teach for America right after college. So in the application process is like months in advance. So I was applying like the fall before graduating. So that was the fall that Tajani was in Korea. So he knew that I was applying, that I was going through that process, that I had my interview that fall as well. So when I got accepted and I was placed in Eastern North Carolina, it wasn't a shock. Like you kind of knew that it was happening because it had been such a long process.
Right. I also knew that you're going to get in because you got brains and you are smart, you are intelligent, you're hardworking. I mean, you have the experience. You've taught kids in high school and middle school. You have that experience. And when you told me about the program, I was like, man, you're getting in. And I know you're going to get in because if I'm on the other side hiring a teacher, I definitely will hire you because you're smart and you're bilingual. You just have all the characteristics that it takes, and you have a good heart. You're kind-hearted. You care about the students. You worry about their well-being, and you take care of people around you, and you have all this charisma. You have all these qualities. And I'm like, yeah, she's definitely getting in.
I mean, for me, that was Teach for America was like my time to define if I was meant to be in education, if teaching special education was my passion or not. So, yeah.
Yeah, and this time around, there are some differences. We are in the same time zone, and you are only 2 hours and a half away, but we still use the same strategies like communicating at a set time of the day, and then also syncing our schedules together, because I would visit you, and then you would visit me, I would visit you, and then, so what we did to make this one, because the difference between this one, even though we were in the same time zone and you were 2.5 hours away from me, it's longer. At this point, our relationship, we just started 6 months. I left to South Korea. I came back from December to May, that's about 5 to 6 months. And then now you're leaving for 2 years. So our relationship, we have only been together in our relationship for about a year or 11 months, not even a year. And then now you're leaving for another 2 years. So we've spent most of our relationship to that point in a long distance. But we use the same strategies. We trust each other. We commit to each other. We were loyal. Our schedules sync. Our calendar, we work our calendar together. We understand when I'm visiting, you understand when you're visiting. All those things were also in place to help our relationship.
Yeah. We used the same, some of the same things that we had learned from South Korea and just try to like apply them, into this longer term. And I mean, there were, some challenging times in between there, and it was hard being apart, and there were weekends where like we just couldn't see each other because I had something going on over there, or you had something going on here and you couldn't go visit me. So, there were challenges in there, but I think at the end of the day, like we always made our relationship a priority. Like every night at the same time, we would talk on the phone. And, with the flexibility here and there when we couldn't for whatever reason. And then also planning like our months in advance, right? So probably like the beginning of each month, or maybe like if right now is October, by now I'd be planning like December. Like we'd always leave like a month in between to kind of like plan, and we planned everything in pencil because plans are always tentative to change, and we were open and flexible, and we just made it work.
That's right. When those change happen, we communicate and understand one another. And so all of the Teach for America thing happened. You had a blast in North Carolina. I visited you. I went to your classroom. The students love you, and your colleagues, your teacher friends love you. It was a challenging time. You were also learning a lot, and all of that experience also helped our relationship. We communicated well. We became tighter together. But like you mentioned, it wasn't all rosy. There were some challenging times where we had to critically think about things and try to work things together, and it wasn't easy. And so you finish your TFA, Teach for America, in North Carolina, and then you move back to Northern Virginia. And so now we were thinking about the future. We were thinking about, okay, we've been dating. We've been dating from 2014, and now it's 2016, 17. Yeah, 2017. So now we have to start thinking about the future. And we had some serious conversations during this time. Can you just briefly, without going into too much detail, what were the conversations like when we started talking about the future?
Well, I mean, by that point, we both knew that we wanted to be together. But before making that full commitment of where our future was going to take us and whether that was going to be together, we needed to really talk about how we were going to make that work, right?
That's correct, because even though we love each other, there were some differences, culturally, religiously, beliefs-wise. So there were some differences that we needed to work to see how those are going to reflect in our relationship.
So we had like a series of conversations. I want to say it was about 3 or 4 conversations in the span of months, probably from like my last couple months in North Carolina, and probably most of 2017, right?
Yeah, we had some series of conversations, and these were heavy conversations.
Yeah, like conversations that like we would both be crying and just be, very, very vulnerable with one another.
That's right. I remember many times. I cried so many times. And the sad part is, if I visit you in North Carolina, I was crying the night before, and I have to leave the next day. I have a 2-hour drive where I'm lonely. I'm reflecting on what we just talked about, and it makes me even more emotional in the car.
Well, that was the same for me going back home. A lot of people don't know this, but I cried every time I would leave from Virginia to North Carolina. I love my job there.
For 2 years.
For 2 years. I love my job there and my students, but I said this at the beginning. I'm a family girl, and everything, all my roots were here in Northern Virginia, and it was a hard time.
And then one of the conversation we gave from a conversation prior to this serious conversation that we had, we gave each other about a month and a half to come up with something like your values. You come up with 5 strong values, and then one of those values is negotiable. You are flexible for change on it. But the 4 core values, those are like deal breakers. Those are non-negotiable. And the reason why we came up with that is to understand if this relationship if we get to the point of getting married, is this going to work out? And these 5 core values, these are things that manifest in your daily life. And so we had this conversation, and what was your take in that one conversation that we had in Manassas? Do you remember that one?
The one where we broke up?
Yeah.
We basically, at the end of the conversation, we were like, okay, this isn't going to work because we weren't being flexible. And like he said, it was non-negotiable. So we broke up for that night, went to bed, broken up, upset and crying. And the next morning we woke up like nothing had happened.
That's crazy. That was crazy because, yep, I remember that very clearly. But the funny thing is we broke up, but we slept on the same bed. No one was touching anybody. You were on the east side of the bed and I was on the west side of the bed. And then we woke up the next morning. I said, oh, okay, I guess we're still dating. But that was a hardcore conversation because I remember thinking all the investment that we've put into this relationship, the time that we've spent, the commitment, that all the sacrifices we've made, this is it.
Yeah. And I think it came down to just, I don't know. I felt like part of it was like neither one of us was willing to sacrifice like what our values were. And also just like thinking about the future, like it's a scary thing, like, and talking about those things and being vulnerable with the other person about those things, it can be pretty scary. And I think there was definitely some fear in it. There was definitely some.
Yeah, definitely there was some fear in it because and it was meant that way, right? Because we're talking about your core values, and these are things that you were brought up believing strongly that this is how life is supposed to be. And now you're about to get into a serious conversation about somebody, creating a future with them. And you are thinking, what is your family going to look like? And I'm thinking, what is my family going to look like? And now we're bringing these two together and mash them together and trying to combine our cultural beliefs, our family beliefs, our individual beliefs. So it wasn't supposed to be easy. So it was a tough conversation. And then in the middle of this conversation, there were some hard decisions that we had to make. We cried together. We cried many, many times because these were not easy conversations to make. And it was intended that way.
Yeah.
And for those of you that are not in the studio, my wife is getting emotional just talking about this. I'm watching her. So yeah, it was hardcore. And then finally, we got to a point where we were able to make some sacrifices and understanding and painted that picture of what our family could look like and what we wanted our family to be. And we were willing to make sacrifices and drop that one negotiable that made this relationship happen.
Yeah.
She's using one word response now because it's getting hard for my wife. But this was not easy, I'm telling you. But that's what relationship is. So when you see those things on Facebook, when you see those things on Twitter, when you see those things on Instagram, there is a lot of work that goes into the relationship. There is a lot of sacrifices that happen behind the scene for you to be able to see that smile, for you to be able to see that picture with us, for you to be able to see that picture with our families and friends. It's a lot of hard work, foundational, fundamental things that you have to do, a lot of sacrifices that you have to do to make it work. So that's That's the essence of a relationship. There is some things that you give up for the other person, and the other person give up things for the relationship to work, for the relationship to happen. Without those sacrifices, it is very hard for these things to work together, because it's two different people trying to combine their lives together.
It's definitely a partnership, right? Like, it's not anything that's one-sided, like one person gets to make the decisions for everybody. And I think, both of you have to want this equally to make it work. Like, going from like dating to engaged to being married now, like looking back at it, I'm like, we put in a lot of work, and through it all, like I would say our best quality was always communication. We were always talking about how we felt and what was going on, and if there was something that we needed to work on, like what type of plan of action we had to make it work. And then our other like quality too was like, I would say just like trusting each other, and trusting that like the other person had like your best interest. Yeah, like your best interest. Yeah.
Yeah. In every decision that happened, I always have your best interest in that decision. And it was the same thing from you to me. And so just knowing that, it gives you a good peace of mind. Can you imagine, do you know what happens 4 days from now?
4 days from now, it's going to be our 1.5 year wedding anniversary, but it's also our 2-year engagement anniversary.
All right, so that's it. We don't need to talk about that one. We are going to wait for another episode where we go into details about how we are able to make the marriage work. Because what we've been able to cover on this episode is just the foundational things in a relationship, the things that we have to do to make the relationship happen. And so in another episode, maybe I'll bring you back to the studio to talk about our marriage and some of the things that we do to make our marriage work.
Okay, sounds good. One last thing, like before we leave our audience, is also that I feel like everyone needs to know that like every relationship is different, and unique in its own way. And like you and your partner are really, the two people like know each other the best. But I think in the end of it all, I feel like sometimes you have to focus just on your relationship and each other, and not what everybody's expectations of your relationship are and what everybody like expects you to do. And that's something that we see very often, right? Like you start dating, and then the next thing you know, people are asking you, when are you getting engaged? When are you getting married? You get married, when are you having kids? And everybody's always trying to make this timeline for you of where you should be and what you should be doing. And guys, that is so unrealistic. Like, we are all in our own timelines, not on anybody else's. The only timeline I'm worried about right now is the one that me and Tajani have for each other and for our life long term. I'm not worried about what anybody else is thinking or wants me to do or any of that. And I feel like especially like young relationships and like new relationships fall into that trap of kind of like letting others influence where their relationship goes. And my advice to new couples or couples who maybe aren't even new but have been together for a while and they're trying to see what their next step is, like, just focus on you and what your partner want. Like, leave some of those like external leave some of those like external factors out in terms of like the people around you and what they're telling you. Like, at the end of the day, like, try to figure out like what God is saying to you about this person and figure out how you feel about them, and work with that person to see where you two want to take your relationship. Don't worry about what anybody else says or what their expectations are for you, because at the end of the day, a relationship is between two people. It's not between a community.
That is a very, very important advice. I couldn't have said that any better. And then what I wanted to add to it is also, the worst thing you could do is compare your relationship to other people's relationship.
No.
Yeah, it's definitely,
No.
it doesn't work like that.
The comparison game is just like the worst thing you can do in anything in life, like compare your life to anybody else's. But when it comes to relationships, that's the worst too. You can't like compare, like we're all different and every relationship is unique in its own way, and that's okay. That's perfectly fine. That's how it's supposed to be. So don't compare yourself to others. If you see others around you, getting engaged at this stage in, your life, like I feel like we see it in our timelines, like
Right.
all our friends were getting in relationships and now they're all engaged and now they're all getting married. And I'm from like me and Tajani right now, we're at the stage where everybody's having a baby, and it's you just have to know that like everything's gonna come at its own time for you when it's meant to be. Mm-hmm. You can't force things. You can't live life like waiting on that next step, like wishing for it to be here faster, because then you're just gonna realize you lived the life of waiting for the next best thing, rather than enjoying that moment. So
yeah, absolutely. Hey man, I'm telling you, my wife, she's beautiful and she got brains. And so this is why, it's some of the reasons why, I'm in love with her, you know what I'm saying? Because she's smart and, she's caring and she's lovely and she's intelligent and, she's a woman of wisdom. I could keep going, you know what I'm saying? Like, I could keep going. But it's one of the reasons why I love her. And what we could do is the next episodes that are going to come out, we can talk about how, like, spirituality plays a role into our relationship. And we could talk about our marriage and give you a glimpse of that as well. But for now, we're going to leave it at that because we have covered a lot of content in this episode. And we hope that, you enjoy or you are able to gain some knowledge from what we've talked about. And if you have any question about us, about the information that we covered here, you can reach us on our Instagram page, which my wife is actually the one who controls it. And you can send her a message. It's Verdad Duele Pod, POD, or you can email us at lvdpod@gmail.com, lvdpod@gmail.com. If you like any of our content, you know what to do. Just leave us a comment, give us some questions, suggestions, or anything like that. Do you have any last minute things you want to say, Mrs. Musa, before I let you go?
No, just thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you so much for making time to come to the studio. We always enjoy having you in the studio because you are our favorite person in this world. So thank you for coming in.
Thanks.
There you have it, everybody. If you're listening to this still, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for listening through and through. Make sure if you haven't done so already, please hit that subscribe button so you can get this automatically downloaded the next time new episodes come out. We have a lot more experiences and stories to tell, and I cannot wait to share them with you. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. Reviews are always appreciated. Thank you. I appreciate you, and let me know what you think on our Instagram at Verdad Duele Pod. Our team is here to serve you. We look forward to hearing about your successes, and maybe one day we may invite you to the studio to share. We wish you luck. The Verdad Duele family has your back. Thank you so much.